Hello everyone, my name is Taku Mhuru in class of 2024 and this is Stromatolites, not another microbe. So stromatolites are an example of what we call trace fossils, and these are different from body fossils, which you might know more commonly. Body fossils would be something like maybe a dinosaur skeleton, which you can see, but trace fossils in comparison show evidence of biological activity. So they're not exactly a part of an animal that used to live back then, but they just show that this animal used to live. So I think it would be more akin to having a dinosaur footprint as opposed to seeing a dinosaur skeleton. So this is what a stromatolite is an example of. So these stromatolites were formed during a period of geological activity called the Cambrian period. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about the Cambrian, because if we talk more and you get more context of what this period looked like, you'll be able to understand the conditions in which these stromatolites were formed. So the Cambrian period is a period of time that was from about 2,500 million years ago to about 600 million years ago. And it was a very warm time period. So at that time, there were no polar caps, there was no North Pole or South Pole. And it is estimated that at that time, the Earth's temperature was about 7 degrees warmer than it is today. At that time, a supercontinent called Pannotia had also broken up. So the landscape around the Earth was formed of small continents that were surrounded by shallow seas, warm shallow seas. And this is also an important note to take. And at that time also, most of the life in this Cambrian period was very simple unicellular, and that's the condition in which these stromatolites were formed. So let's see why these conditions were suitable for the stromatolites to form. So before I go any further, the definition of stromatolite means layered rock. So if maybe you move closer to this stromatolite fossil, you'll be able to see what I really mean. So if we look closely at our fossil, we can see that we have sort of these layers that are shown by rings, and that's where the fossil gets its name from, because it means layered rock, and we can see these sort of layers that are around our rock. So our stromatolite, or layered rock, was formed by bacteria during the Cambrian period, as I've mentioned before. And these bacteria are called cyanobacteria. So they get their name from the color cyan, which is a bluish greenish color. And this is also an important note to take, because these bacteria are actually photosynthetic. So like the green that we have in leaves, which help them photosynthesize, these bacteria are also green in color, and this helps them to photosynthesize. So the conditions of the Cambrian were very suitable for them to multiply and get energy, because the shallow seas allowed sunlight to penetrate to the seabed where these bacteria are found, and they could photosynthesize and get energy and produce. Also, because most of the life forms during this Cambrian period were very simple and unicellular, they had no predators, so they could multiply without having any animals prey on them, and this allowed them to multiply a lot. So before I talk any further about stromatolites, I want to show you guys a cool fossil that we have in this museum. So please follow me to this side. So what we have here is a cross-section of the stromatolites that I showed you before. So imagine that the big rock that I showed you has been cut in half, sort of sliced so you can see in between. So this is what you would have. So if we look closely at this cross-section of our stromatolite, we can see that we have different colored layers of the rock. We have these lighter layers, which are sort of sandy, that look almost like dust or dirt from just on the ground. And then we have these darker layers that we also have interspaced between these lighter layers. So what happened with stromatolites was the cyanobacteria that formed stromatolites lived on the seabed. And as part of the byproducts of their photosynthesis, they secreted sticky secretions, and these sticky secretions would get sediment and sand stuck on them. So what they lived on was called a microbial mat, which was on top of the seabed, and then sediment would fall on as other geological processes like erosion happened, and this sediment and rocks and bits of sand would stick on that microbial mat. So the bacteria would then move on top of that layer of dirt that had been formed, and then more sediment would fall, and then bacteria would move on top, more sediment would fall, and the process would go on and on and on until we had these stromatolites form. So you might look at the rock and you might think, oh wow, I mean, that was fast. It's just layers and layers and layers. But actually, it is estimated that for 1 centimeter of this rock to form, it would take like 25 years. So if you look at this rock with all these layers, I think, well, I might say this is more than 20 centimeters. This means it's a lot and a lot of years that we are looking at this period. So this process was not at all simple. It was very complex and took a lot of time. And they also had many forms. So they could be columnar, they could be wavy. They had many sort of forms that they could take these rocks. What we have here is an example of a columnar rock, because if you look at it, it would form like a conical shape almost, which is a column. But they could have many different types of forms. So after we've spoken about these stromatolites and the bacteria that formed them, you might be asking yourselves, okay, that sounds interesting. So it's just a rock. What's the significance of this rock? So we're going to talk about why this rock is very significant in human evolution. So first of all, stromatolites help us to identify what the area looked like before what it looks like today. So if we find a stromatolite in an area, or if we find stromatolites in an area, we know that, oh, there was a shallow sea here because these were formed in shallow seas. So this helps to give us an idea of how much geology has changed in a certain area. For example, the stromatolite that we saw over there was found in New York. What is New York today? Obviously, if we speak of New York, we don't think of shallow seas at all. But then because we've seen this stromatolite, we know, oh, at some period in time during the Cambrian, this was actually a shallow sea. So this helps us to get an idea of what the geological landscape looked like at that time. Also, another byproduct of photosynthesis, which I had not talked about, was oxygen. So we know that when plants photosynthesize, they also produce oxygen. And that's the same with these bacteria. When they photosynthesized during the Cambrian, they produced lots and lots of oxygen. And because they were simple life forms, there was no one to use up that oxygen. So a lot of oxygen was just produced and it was just getting out there. So it was produced in the sea. So at first it was contained in that sea, and it actually reacted with iron, which was in the water, and it formed what are known as BIFs, which are banded iron formations. And cool fact, this is what we mine today as iron ore. So we usually find that mines are formed in shafts that are either vertical or horizontal, following like these BIFs, like these formations, which are like banded iron formations. So that's where all the iron we get to today came from. That's also a cool fact. And after all this oxygen had been used in this process of rusting, more oxygen was still being produced because, well, these animals had no predators and they had all the sunlight in the world. So it started escaping from the sea, just going up into the atmosphere. And this led to an event called the Great Oxygenation Event. And this is where the ozone layer was formed. So we talk a lot about ozone layer today in terms of climate change because we know the ozone layer is very important. So what the ozone layer did for the Earth was it formed a shield around the Earth which prevented harmful cosmic rays coming from the sun to get into the Earth. So it protected the Earth almost. And this was done by these bacteria which were forming stromatolites. And also because the Earth was now more suitable in terms of living conditions, there were no more cosmic rays, and also the temperature of the Earth gradually cooled down because of the ozone layer. This made conditions on Earth more suitable for life to form. So from that time on, life evolved into more complex life forms, which were multicellular, which formed dinosaurs, which formed birds, which formed fish. But it all started with these simple cyanobacteria, these simple unicellular bacteria that were just photosynthesizing and producing their oxygen. And so we can credit these cyanobacteria to kickstarting evolution on Earth. That is the significance of the stromatolite, and that is the significance of this rock today. And also a cool fact before I sign off, you might be thinking, oh, maybe like the dinosaurs, these cyanobacteria went extinct and they're just a bit of the past. But actually, these cyanobacteria still exist today. So follow me back to our old fossil and we're going to talk about a picture that we can see here. So if you look closely, you can see a sea diver who's holding a rock. and there's sand in between with ripples. So this picture was actually taken, well, very close to this modern day age, obviously, because it's a sea diver. And the rocks that you're actually seeing here are stromatolites, which were formed in the current age. These are not fossils. So yes, people, cyanobacteria still exist today, and they still produce oxygen. But, well, we can no longer find them as much as we did during the Cambrian period, because conditions on Earth have changed. So, for example, we now have deeper seas, and these deeper seas don't allow sunlight to get to the seabed. So the cyanobacteria can't live in these seas and produce oxygen because they won't be able to photosynthesize. We also have predators now because of evolution. So mostly when we find these cyanobacteria, we find them usually in hypersaline conditions, not because they need the salt, but because these conditions prevent predators from living in their environment. So that's where they thrive. But yes, cyanobacteria still exist today, stromatolites are still being formed today, and, well, this is the end of my presentation. So the next time you come into our museum and see this rock called a stromatolite, just know evolution started there. Thank you.